Good evening from Los Angeles, California. My name is Charlie Coker, and I'm the Executive Director of Asia Society Southern California. Thank you for joining us for this fascinating program we'll be putting on this evening, entitled Hollywood's New Anime Gold Rush. We'll be exploring the world of anime and its kind of resurgence of interest in Hollywood and discuss its success globally. We are very pleased to have our partnering with us today, not only Japan House Los Angeles, but also Cool Japan Fund, as well as JETRO. I'd like to really thank Yuko Kaifu, the president of Japan House Los Angeles, for her invaluable assistance, her and her team's invaluable assistance in putting this program together. Without her expertise and knowledge and her team's invaluable assistance, then none of this would have been possible. So I'd like to turn it over now to Yuko to just say a few words. So thank you, Yuko.
Thank you, Charlie, so much for your very kind introduction. Hello, everyone. I am Ayuko Kaifu. I'm the president of Japan House Los Angeles, and it's so exciting to be able to work with Asia Society of Southern California, my favorite organization, particularly as part of the Entertainment Summit of the society, featuring this great world of Japanese animation in partnership with JETRO Los Angeles and Cool Japan Fund. We do have excellent speakers today. But before we get into that, for those of you who are not familiar with Japan House is a public and cultural diplomacy initiative to showcase the best of Japan in wide-ranging areas, including, but not limited to, pop culture. We are located at the heart of Hollywood, California, with the gallery, library, event hall, restaurant, and retail spaces. Due to the current COVID-19 pandemic, we're currently closed for our facilities, but we have been presenting many virtual and online programs, such as the one we are presenting today. As I said, we have a distinguished group of speakers who will speak about Japanese animation from both cultural and business perspectives. And I'm so excited. I'm so much looking for the panel talk, and I hope you enjoy the program. Now I turn it back to Charlie. Charlie?
Thank you, Yuko. And again, thank you so much for your partnership. It's just been an amazing pleasure, and we owe a lot to you and your team for this amazing program that we're going to be having this evening. As Yuko mentioned, this is part of the US Asia. This is the part of the US Asia Entertainment Summit. This is our 11th iteration of it. This is the final program for the week. Normally, this would be an all-day program, live, in person at the Skirball Center usually, but this year, due to the circumstances that we're all so familiar and aware of, we've made this into a one-week program with different events and spread off over the entire, and this is our concluding program. And so we're very grateful for all of you to join us. And I'd like to move forward and introduce the moderator and the panelists we're having this evening. So we're very pleased for our moderator this evening. Joining us is Roland Kelts. Roland is probably the leading writer and scholar and journalist specializing in Japanese culture and literature. He's written a very highly acclaimed best-selling book, Japan America: How Japanese Pop Culture Has Invaded the US, which is considered the definitive guide in its topic area. He's been a contributor to The New Yorker, The Guardian, The New York Times, The Wall Street Journal, CNN, BBC, NPR, and NHK, among others. He's also been a writing fellow at Columbia University and a journalist fellow at Harvard University. He's also been a media consultant and for many different projects and films and other media projects that throughout his career. He's joined by Jason DeMarco, who is the SVP and creative director for On Air at Adult Swim. Jason, began his tenure at Cartoon Network by creating Toonami, and has moved on to basically was also founded Adult Swim's William Street Records, where he was basically the head A&R, artist and repertoire contact. He's been very involved with production and on several anime titles for Adult Swim, including FLCL Progressive and FLCL Alternative, as well as the upcoming Blade Runner Black Lotus, Uzumaki and Fina, and Princess Pirate upcoming series. Jason is joined by Maki Terashima Furuta. She is the president of production at IG USA and has produced many shows, including FLCL2 Progressive, FLCL3 Alternative, and Uzumaki. She's also worked on Lucas Animation's Clone Wars and the Warner Brothers Batman Gotham Knight, as well as Netflix's Cyborg 009. She's also worked on the DreamWorks anime-inspired Ghost in the Shell, and was co-producer as a co-producer and as an animation producer for Castlevania for Netflix. And finally, but not least, is John Ledford is joining us. John is the founder of Sentai, which he founded back in 2008. Sentai has been, created incredible titles such as Grave of the Fireflies, Ninja Scroll, Danmachi, Haikyuu, and Made in the Abyss. He's also been involved with the distribution of anime hit titles such as Neon Genesis Evangelion, Sailor Moon, and of course, how could anybody forget Hello Kitty? So without further ado, I'd like to turn over the program to Roland and get started. Thank you, Roland.
Thank you for the kind introduction, Charlie. And good evening, everyone on that side of the dateline. And good morning if you're on this side of the dateline, where I'm coming to you from Tokyo. I want to start, obviously, by thanking the hosts and sponsors of this event. It's a thrill to be a part of it with these frontline professionals in the US anime industry. Asia Society of Southern California, the beautiful and elegant Japan House Los Angeles, Japan External Trade Organization, JETRO, which I'm sure is equally beautiful and elegant, and the Cool Japan Fund, which we know is beautiful and elegant. Thank you all for hosting and sponsoring this event. As Charlie mentioned, I'm the author of a book called Japan America, which is right here. And it's sort of got me started on this journey into the worlds of anime and manga and Japanese pop culture. I'm happy to say that it's been just been newly licensed for a new Spanish language edition, which will be out around Christmas this year. So if you read Spanish, you can read a new version of the book. I'm also a contributing editor to this publication, which is called Monkey Business. So now it's called Monkey, and it's the only English language Japanese literary magazine that comes out every year. And I'm happy to say that this publication is also coming out at the end of the month. It's at monkeybusinessmag.com if you're interested in Japanese literature and manga as well. So I'm going to start by pointing out, now that I have John, Maki, and Jason here with me, that Japan, the country, popular culture, produces 11, count them, 11 of the top 25 top grossing, highest grossing media franchises in the world, which is truly a sort of astonishing figure. It's something that was pointed out to me by my friend Larry Mall, who worked in the industry for a long time. I didn't realize that. What's equally striking is that Japan is the only non-English language nation featured on that list of 25 top grossing properties. And at number 1 and number 2 are Pokemon and Hello Kitty. That's quite an achievement. You know, Japanese is not a romance language. It's not really related to English directly. And Japan is a relatively tiny archipelago here in the North Pacific, smaller, actually square mileage is smaller than the state of California. So that's a figure I wanted to put onto your radar. Also, the very first exhibition, the inaugural exhibition at the upcoming Academy Museum of Motion Pictures out there in Los Angeles, that will be devoted to a Japanese artist, the great animation maestro Hayao Miyazaki. And that's coming up in April 2021. So the very first exhibition at the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures will be Hayao Miyazaki. A couple of stats for you. The anime industry is roughly a $25 billion industry today globally, expected to rise to $33.6 billion over the next 5 years. It's growing very, very fast. We're in a flurry, as many of you know, of live action remakes of anime originals. One Piece is being shot right now down in South Africa. Cowboy Bebop is being shot right now down in New Zealand. The Promised Neverland, the manga series, and Your Name, the big hit film of 2017, are also being remade as live action projects. So there's a lot of activity in the world of anime and the world of anime IP right now. And just quickly, in the pandemic year we're in, a sort of somewhat unexpected development, which is that there's been a huge spike in numbers of subscribers to streaming services like John Ledford's High Dive service, also, of course, Crunchyroll. Netflix announced very recently that anime is in the top 10 lists in nearly 100 countries. Netflix, which doesn't like to say anything about their titles, has sort of confessed that anime is a leading property for their streaming platform. And of course, Sony is supposedly on the verge of purchasing Crunchyroll for nearly $1 billion. So it's a very, very exciting time to talk about the anime industry. And I'm very honored to be with such a great group of panelists. These guys, these people are on the front lines of the US anime industry and have been for a number of years. So I'm going to turn it over to them and just ask them to answer, to start with a very, very simple question, which is, in a sense, why are you here? What got you into anime? What's the story of your ensnarement in anime? And in a sense, what do you do? What do you do in the US anime industry? And I'll start with John. John, maybe you can kick it off.
We unmute that. Thank you very much, Roland. I greatly appreciate the introduction. I'm John Ledford, President and CEO of Sentai Filmworks. I got into anime as a small child watching Speed Racer, Voltron, Battle of the Planets, and all the way up through Robotech, and started a video game company importing Japanese video games the early 90s, and found out these video games were based on Japanese cartoons. Thought I'd license a title, bought the title, made good money, and so this is really nice because I found something that was once my hobby and a passion for me as a entertainment medium to become my business. And so how did I get here? A lot of hard work, some blind luck, and a lot of support from our friends in Japan.
So Maki, do you want to follow up with that?
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Maki Terashima Furuda. I'm the president of Production IG USA, and I'm also the producer. I started working for Production IG back in 1997, and so it's been 24 years. And I started out as a licensing manager and then moved on to co-productions. And I've been producing a lot of shows with Netflix as well as Jason DeMarco here at Adult Swim. Nice to meet you.
And Jason, yeah.
I'm Jason DeMarco. I am the Senior Vice President and Creative Director for Adult Swim and Cartoon Network On Air. I'm also the co-creator of Toonami. I became an anime fan probably when I first saw Star Blazers as a kid, along with several of the other shows John mentioned, Battle of the Planets, which is what they call Gatchaman over here. And then when I graduated from college, I started working at Turner, at the time Turner Network Television, And one of my friends worked for Cartoon Network, and he was asked to come up with a new block of afternoon cartoons for kids when they come home from school. And he and I together both had a shared love of anime, so we pitched the idea for a show called Toonami, which our network didn't really know what anime was, so they let us try this thing out as long as it was cheap. And I've been doing that or some form of that for 25 years now. So luckily, we now have moved beyond just acquiring titles and airing them on Adult Swim. I also have several co-productions of original anime, several of which I'm working on with Maki, as she mentioned.
Okay, so all three of you have, and I say this out of great respect, you've been around the industry for a while. This is not a new thing for you. And I suppose the $25 billion question, especially out in Hollywood, is why anime? If you had to pin it down to, I'm going to force you to pin it down to two things, because for the sake of time, what do you think is behind the appeal of this animation produced in Japan? As you know, anime has boomed at a time when there isn't necessarily an animation boom. There isn't necessarily a hunger for animation from France or from Germany or from the Middle East. It's really been very Japan focused. So I ask to all three of you, why? What do you think it is about the Japanese version of animation that appeals to a global audience? John, do you want to start?
Yeah, certainly. I think the big part of it is it fills the gap that Disney doesn't. I used to call it the anime is kind of the anti-Disney. Whereas Disney is and similar, American and traditional products have been family fun entertainment. Anime reaches every level of society and can touch each and every one of us in a very special way. It's not just focused on Saturday morning cartoons and the typical Disney fare that has been around for many years, not so recently, but traditionally speaking. Also, there is something about anime that is very different in the way it is told. These stories have a certain kind of spirit or essence to them that is very unique in storytelling and design and execution, unlike any other medium from any other country on earth. And I think these are the two big points that help anime grow and continue to grow as a market.
Just to follow up very quickly, what about the storylines, John? Because that's very interesting. I mean, a lot of people who don't know much about anime, they just see the visuals, right? They see anything from Pikachu to Goku and they think, oh yeah, that's that Japanese stuff.
Right.
But you just mentioned the stories. What do you think it is about the stories that makes it?
If you look at traditional Hollywood movies, they have this kind of build up, and climax. Japanese storytelling builds characters. It's more of a spiral, and it brings you deep into the heart of the characters and the storyline. It's a much different method of storytelling than what people are used to. And I think that draws a lot of people into the medium.
Maki, what do you think?
I do agree with John, but I also want to add that Japanese animation is just very beautiful. I'm not saying like, other animations aren't, but like Japanese animation are just visually stunning. And then in terms of stories, instead of like a very simple Hollywood storytelling, which I am very fond of, Japanese storytelling is very unique in a way. It leaves the audience with lots of questions. It just gives, it allows the audience to think, on their own, what the conclusion or what the climax, what the whole meaning of the story is all about. So it just, I think it motivates the audience to be a part of the story.
Would you say that it gives the audience or the viewer a chance to interact more?
Yeah, I think so. It just gives them like like instead of like giving them an answer to what the story is about, it just kind of leaves everything open-ended so that the audience can think, themselves what the story is about what how the story ended and whatnot.
Jason, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I very much agree with both what John and Maki said. And I would just add, you know, for me, two of the key points that make anime such a global success now are volume, in terms of there is so much work coming out of Japan all the time in every genre imaginable, that as far as entry points, there are so many entry points for anyone who's curious to get into anime at all levels of storytelling. And then quality. It's been, as Maki said, the animation quality is superb and superior to most other places. Part of that is because of the factory method and the apprenticeship model that anime has had for so long. It's been a very settled business for a long time, with a lot of very talented artists working at a very high level. Even before anime went global the way it is now, it's been a very settled business in Japan that's busy all the time. So I just think when you have a lot of highly talented artists working at that level, and an audience that's so rapacious and ready to just get stories of all different kinds, you're just going to get a lot of great content. And that content is going to be something that appeals to a whole bunch of different people outside of the, you know, Japan.
Those are great answers, but I'm going to force you into a deeper corner, each of you, and ask you, you know, somebody watching this who may not have actually watched a single anime title, maybe somebody who's interested in producing but is thinking, what, you know, what should I look at? You've all just described distinctive characteristics of anime that come out of Japan, animation from Japan. I'd like to ask each of you for one or two titles that you would throw into the hands of somebody who says, I've never seen this stuff, I don't get it. What should I, well, what do I look at, right? My kid likes Naruto, but I don't know what's going on with this stuff. Maki, go ahead and start. What would you
You
point
know,
them to?
Roland, I know you're so funny. I'm probably like the worst person that should be answering this question, just because like everybody knows by now, but I never really grew up with anime. I'm not like a anime fan either. Like if anything, I don't really enjoy watching anime, or I never really used to. I know, but everybody knows, so it's okay. But then I'm good at what I do, and I've been doing it for a long time, so it's fine. And then you know my boss approves too. But when I was first introduced to anime, I mean, you have to understand that I was born in Japan, but I grew up in, you know, Iran and US and, you know, everywhere else. I never really grew up watching anime. Ishikawa, the president of IG, he told me, I mean, he had an interview with me on the phone back in 1997. And Atsushi Takeuchi, who is the mecha designer for Ghost in a Shell, he told me that if you want to have an interview with him, you need to watch this VHS. This was like still back, you know, VHS back at that time. I had the hardest time staying awake throughout the whole movie. I probably tried to like watch it 10 times and then I never even finished watching it because it's so complicated. But people are raving about that. You know, it was like the number one on Billboard, and people are just like saying such amazing things about it. And back then, I still didn't understand why. But when I finally got to watch it, I finally got like why it was so such a phenomenon. Sure enough, you know, there's so many movies, Hollywood movies that are made after that have been inspired by Ghost in a Shell. So if you have never watched any anime before, if you're kind of like me, then go ahead and watch Ghost in a Shell. That's like one of the things that I super, super highly recommend. And then the other one, which is like one of my personal favorite, is Graves of the Fireflies by Takahata. That one, like I probably watched like over, maybe Sentai. Are you guys like distributing that also, right? No.
Yes, Maki-san.
Yeah. So
Thank you
yeah,
for the
support
plug.
Sentai. Yeah, go grab your copy of the Blu-ray or DVD from Sentai, and you need to watch that. I mean, that I watched it like 10 times maybe, and then I cried 11 times.
Jason, what are your picks?
I get asked this question all the time, you know, running Toonami. I always say for series, I mean, I know it's older now, but there's a reason Cowboy Bebop is being made into a very expensive show by Netflix, because they understand the central appeal. So I would say watch the animated show. Don't watch the live action show. Watch that after you watch the animated show. And as far as movies, I would actually point to Your Name, because my daughter will occasionally watch anime, but she's not at all an anime person. She really has only messed with Ghibli movies and stuff. But she and her friends watch Your Name, and it's such a strong movie and such a beautiful story. They just were enraptured immediately. So I think that stuff like that is a great gateway.
And John,
I have to go with my all-time favorite, Miyazaki's My Neighbor Totoro, because that is my favorite anime of all time. I fell in love with anime through that, and it has been a constant film that I can give anybody, whether they have kids or whether they are, you know, old, any age can enjoy Totoro. Outside of family animation, certainly Akira or Ninja Scroll are my other two go-tos. And if you're thinking of series, I can never say no to Evangelion.
never say no to Evangelion.
Never say no.
That's dangerous. Interestingly, out of the films that the panelists chose, Ghost in the Shell, Cowboy Bebop, and Your Name have all been produced or are being produced as live action projects, films or series, etc. So to some extent, Hollywood involvement in all of those titles. That's a pretty it's a pretty good percentage. And as you all know, there's a lot of debate, controversy, especially among anime fans. They're usually fairly critical, sometimes unfairly so, of live action adaptations of Japanese animations and manga. I guess I would ask you two questions related to that. First of all, is it worth it to, I mean, if it's a great animation, what's the point of turning it into a live action film? We just talked earlier about what makes anime great. You talked about a certain kind of storytelling and a certain kind of visual beauty and distinctive visual elements. It's obviously a completely different medium when you make live action. You're talking about a whole different set of criteria for a live action film, especially if it's made in the US or by a non-Japanese company. And the second question, I suppose, would be, should those other films you mentioned, those other titles, be live action adaptations too? What about Grave of the Fireflies? What about Akira? Should that be a live action? You know, it's been in turnaround for a long time. What about Evangelion? Should you make a live action Evangelion and try to do that? So two questions, you know, why do it? And should you do more of it? What should you do? Who wants to start? I'll leave it open.
Maki has the most experience with Ghost of the Shell, so I'm going to put him under the bus.
Yeah, Maki definitely.
I knew you were gonna say that, John.
Good point.
Why do they do it? I think there's like pros and cons to making a live action off of an anime, because not many people are familiar with anime, and then when they think of anime or animation, they think it's primarily for kids, right? But then like if they are made into like a Hollywood live action movie, then people go see it, and then they learn about the title, and then the pro about that is they will recognize the anime Ghost in the Shell, and then they'll buy that, and then they'll watch it and stuff like that. So, but it really needs to be made as a successful, a good movie. If they butcher it, then you know why, right? So, and then like in terms of like whether all anime or all manga should be made into a remake live action, I would say no. And then like the same thing can be said about whether live action should be made into anime movies or titles. I think it really depends on the content. Some movies are suitable to be, or you know, some movies will make a good live action. but some movies, some animes don't make good live action. I mean, I have like personal opinions as to like what would make a good anime. I mean, live action, what would not make a good anime. I'm not gonna say it right here because I'll probably get a whole bunch of emails from the haters. but again, like you have to really uh, what understand the content to to decide whether this should be made into live action or not.
Well, Maki, you mentioned Grave of the Fireflies, Hotaru no Haka, which is a classic film, certainly in Japan and I think around the world for people who know it. And as I'm sure you know, there have been live action adaptations here in Japan,
Mm, yeah,
which
yeah,
really did nothing to take the audience away from the anime. I mean, it's still the original anime from 1988 that people go back to, the imagery and so on. Do you think, for example, Hollywood, a major studio, should try to make Grave of the Fireflies as a
I
live
don't
action?
I don't think so. I mean, like that's like just so special to the Japanese and to World War II and stuff like that. It just needs to. I don't think that should be made into a live action. They could make something like similar to that, like inspired by Grave of the Fireflies, but like I personally don't think, yeah, that should even be attempted. And I don't know of any producers or studios that have even mentioned about making that into live action. I don't know. Have you, Roland?
No, but people have asked me, and people have actually talked to me about why it should not be made into a live action, and it mainly has to do with the portrayal of the children.
Yeah.
That if you had actual actors in those roles, it would just be impossible, unbearable to watch.
Yeah. And it's such an intense anime, and just the way Takahata portrayed the characters and the scenery and like the story overall, it's just like so intense that I don't think anybody, like even if it was like made into like a remake anime or like a spin-off, I don't think it would even beat it. It's so strong. It's such a masterpiece. I mean, that's my personal opinion.
Looks like a painting sometimes.
Yeah.
Jason, what are your thoughts? Hollywood remakes?
I'm agnostic to the remakes. I think there haven't really been too many successful ones for sure, but in terms of certainly not of anime. But I don't think people shouldn't try. And I think that the upside is always more attention brought to the original work. So to me, it's almost there's no way to lose for the original work. If Cowboy Bebop's live action series ends up being terrible, it's still gonna draw more attention to how great the original was. If it ends up being good, it's still going to also draw attention to how great the source material was. So to me, those remakes may succeed or fail on their own, but they don't tarnish or affect in a bad way the original work. And I also don't think people shouldn't attempt it. I just think, as Maki said, look, comic book movies didn't become the dominant force that they are until people who really understood those characters and their appeal as comic lovers were able to get behind the reins and make these movies that stayed true to these characters. And it's the same with anime. It's got to be people, you can't just love the anime, you have to understand how anime works. You know what I mean? And there's also cultural considerations that even add complexity. But that doesn't mean to me you shouldn't try, or that someone won't eventually make an amazing live action Neon Genesis Evangelion. I can't even wrap my head around how they would do that, but I don't say it's impossible because I've seen other remakes that I thought were going to be terrible that were amazing, so you just never know. And I feel like you can tell any story in any medium, and things can be influenced by each other in any medium, and why not try it?
You mentioned something there, Jason, the added complexity. You're not just remaking a Marvel comic, but you said the added complexity of culture and cultural differences, cultural distinctions, which raises another interesting question. As all of you know, I'm sure that there is this quasi debate. If it's not made in Japan, is it anime? If it's not made by Japanese, 100% Nihonjin, is it actually anime? And we now are confronting that question more directly because of so much foreign investment in the anime industry, really over the past 5 years, but I can say it's accelerated in the past year or two. And you have co-productions now. So you have a big media company, a big studio jointly producing an anime with usually a small mom and pop anime studio here in Tokyo, West Tokyo, paying low rent. So co-productions, I'm asking all of you, is this a positive direction, or is there a genuine concern that when these investors and big media companies from outside of Japan throw money in the pot, that it's not going to be the anime we know and love? What are your thoughts on that debate, that question, I should say, not so much debate? John, you want to?
I'll take it first, if it's okay.
Yeah.
My feeling is, going back to my original thought, anime comes from manga, but both anime and manga have a kind of solar spirit to it. You can get some of the best spreadsheet jockeys and analysts on earth outside of Japan to analyze the cuts and the sequence and the characters and how anime looks, and you can copy it. But can you really copy the soul and essence of the passion of the creators, looking through the lens of a Japanese person who is making this work? And I don't think you really can. You can probably come close, and you can probably fool the mass public, but true anime fans will always know, I think, the difference between real anime and something that's a little different, Hollywood produced.
So, John, are we going to see an increasing number of kind of diluted, hybrid kind of animes, but not really anime? Are we going to see that coming out in the next, 4 or 5 years?
I think absolutely, because we're already seeing production lines in Japan backed up for several years, and this was before COVID, because all the studios in Japan are receiving money from some of the big streaming companies and other platforms. There is so much money coming in from Hollywood and China, it's backing up the system. And when you have a logjam like that, you have to start offshoring. So you're going to go to Korea, you're going to go to Indonesia, you're going to go to Taiwan, you're going to go somewhere else to get your work done. In some cases, we've heard that some of the big media companies don't really like to do the Japanese system. They, prefer to copy it. They think the Japanese are sometimes too slow or too committee driven, and American or European businesses want to move quickly. And in those cases, they think the American company or European company can do better. So you're going to see, I think, more and more kind of imitation anime come out on, especially the big streaming platforms. It's the only way to fill the gap. You just can't produce enough in Japan at the moment. Maki,
Jason,
do you guys agree?
Right. Jason,
I totally agree. Maki has a ton of experience with international co-production, so I'm going to throw to her in a minute, but I see the same things John's talking about. I think we are basically at capacity and beyond right now because of the massive influx of money into the anime business. And I do think you're seeing more and more outsourced studios that do Japanese style, but are American or Korean. I don't necessarily think, by the way, that's a bad thing. I think that there is good work that can come out of that. I just think it's going to be very tricky to try to replicate the anime model and maintain the level of quality they have. But John's right. American companies in particular don't like how slow the Japanese model is, and they don't like how freeform it is, where the creator has total control and things will change at every stage wildly sometimes as the whole unit, freeforms almost sometimes. That is just so antithetical to the way American animation is made. There's going to be some growing pains.
Yeah, Maki.
When you say co-production, like I do a lot of co-productions, but then Jason and I have co-produced a lot of shows together. In fact, we're still doing, more of it. In my definition, co-productions are projects where you get financed from overseas companies, such as Netflix, Hulu, Adult Swim, and whatnot. So as long as the show is made by a Japanese anime company, I would call that anime. And then I've also produced Castlevania and Neo Yokio and stuff like that. Those are not anime just because they're not made by the Japanese anime companies. They're made by US companies as well as Korean companies, but those are called anime inspired. So when you market those properties as anime because they know that by using the word anime, it's going to sell. You can't do that because those are not anime. I mean, I'm not trying to be like a racist or anything, but those are like anime inspired shows or anime inspired animation. So I think that's fine. I mean, Castlevania is great. I mean, there's absolutely no Japanese people involved in that show. Maybe like some animators that I may not know about. I'm probably the only person that's Japanese that was involved in that show. But look at it. It's wonderful. You know, it's a great show. It gained so much popularity, and you know, they're making like sequels after sequels and all that, but like it's not anime, you know. But co-productions are great because, as you may know, Japanese anime industry is very poor. This panel is called Gold Rush. No, Roland, I'm gonna say it. This panel is called Gold Rush, but ironically enough, Japanese anime studios are poor. You know, we need the money, and just within domestic funding, it is impossible to make an anime. So that's why we're getting, you know, a lot of financial help from Netflix, you know, Adult Swim, Sentai, everywhere. You know, so like in order to sustain the industry and to sustain the culture of Japanese animation, we need all the help we can get. So I am all, you know, about co-productions. I think it's great. And that's where I come in to, you know, to get partnerships with different studios and different distributors.
That's very well put and very well explained. You know, just as an aside, as a half Japanese kid who was raised mostly in the States, it just blows my mind that anybody would care. You know, when I was a kid, I mean, people asked me if I ate raw fish. They would sort of go, "Oh, gross," and thought my mother must be Chinese. So the fact that anybody's actually, you know, arguing about whether something is authentically Japanese anime is kind of astonishing to me now. Let's talk about 2020 now. Here we are in this very odd, very trying year. Let's face it, for many, many people, most of us, I should say, around the world. The pandemic hit. Here in Tokyo, I met with a lot of anime studio heads, and we discussed what was happening in the industry. Certainly back in April and May, things looked pretty dire, I would say. The declaration of emergency in Japan by Prime Minister Abe meant that a lot of studios had to just shut down, stop work mid-production, tried to implement teleworking strategies, but as many of you know, in Japan, that can be a trickier thing because people are used to having face-to-face meetings and meeting with the manager, the shacho, and discussing every decision. And so it's not so easy to suddenly switch to a bunch of Zoom calls in Japan. I have to say, people have done a pretty good job given the cultural resistance. But here we are in November, and the picture, COVID is still with us, but the picture is quite a bit rosier in the anime industry. People are back to work. They may be working from home, but they're creating, they're producing. The studios are getting back on schedule. As you know, there is a massive hit movie here in Japan that is filling cinemas, breaking records, global records, called Demon Slayer, Kimetsu no Yaiba, which is an anime film, and it's selling out cinemas. People are going to cinemas with their children and watching this film, and it's a record-breaking box office hit. Um, as I said earlier, streaming has just exploded, and one of the hottest streaming properties right now is anime. So, you know, really, if the start of this year or earlier this year, when you looked at the pandemic and the studios are scrambling, you would have thought, oh man, it's going to be pretty bleak by November. That's not really the case. So from your perspectives on the US side of the anime industry, how do you assess 2020? Is it a great boom year for anime? Is it a year full of pros and cons? And if it is, what are the pros? What are the cons? How would you assess the year we're about to finish. Yep.
Okay. For our business at Sentai, we've, of course, we have a theatrical vertical inside our business, and that took a big hit this year. Some of the projects we wanted to release had to be shelved and later go online for digital viewing. Big box stores, as you know, closed, and so that took a little bit of a hit, but Amazon and other e-retailers picked up, including our own website. But where we saw the biggest movement was in our streaming business. Our owned and operated subs, direct subscribers, we grew exponentially, well beyond the level that we expected for the year, and we were very happy with that. A lot of people are staying home. They don't want to do anything. Maybe they don't want to even touch the product. I see some of my neighbors in my condominium, they'd get packages from Amazon. They'd be spraying them with alcohol before they even took them in their house. So, streaming, you don't have to touch anything that's outside your house. I think, people were really happy to stay home, relax, watch Netflix, watch High Dive, Crunchyroll, whichever, and, enjoy their anime.
So it's been a boom for you in terms of High Dive and the streaming platform.
For High Dive, yes. For theatriral, no.
For
For home
theatrical,
video, it's pretty much, some parts elevated, some parts were kind of decimated, but overall it was, not too bad of a year.
Yeah.
But on the supply side, the studios in Japan had to slow down, and so on the buy side, at least for licensing, it slowed down quite a bit. So that'll have a hit in 2021.
Yeah. Maki, do you want to?
Yeah, with me, currently I'm producing about 7 shows, and 2020 has been tough because last I went to Japan was back in February, and when I came back, that's when COVID started hitting the US as well. So all the recordings have stopped because I was recording for Ghost in the Shell 2045 at that time, and I needed to be self-quarantined. And then Japan was, just working remotely, which was possible for the animators to be efficiently, able to work from home. However, when it comes to voice recordings or mocap, anything that needed to have to deal with talents, those needed to be halted entirely. So 2 of the shows that, I'm co-producing the show, these 2 shows with Jason right now, but one of them took a huge hit, so that's been delayed tremendously, and so finally it's sort of back on track. However, just recently, how many COVID positives happened in Japan, 500 in Tokyo or something, I forget.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just been really, really crazy. So I'm just hoping that it just doesn't get any worse than now. That's why I've been telling everybody to stay home, unless you really, really need to crucially go out and do something, stay home, man. I mean, can't you just be a little bit more patient, right? I mean, people are so bored, but just try to find something to do at home. Try to be more considerate to others so that the virus doesn't spread anymore. How difficult is that? So my only concern, I mean, the productions has started resuming, but my only concern is what if it hits more, again, harder this time, and productions halt? There's nothing we can do about it, but as long as people are considerate of each other, one another, this can be stopped, so I'm hoping that we won't have any more delays other than that.
Yeah, me too. Jason, 2020, what do you think?
Everyone assumed that streaming live television was also going to get this huge boost in viewing, and that didn't really happen as much. Streaming sort of did get that boost. Video on demand got a big boost, but of course my company was involved with launching HBO Max, which is a major streaming service. So there were up and down sides, but they're not putting out the Wonder Woman movie theatrically. They are going to put it out, but they're also releasing it straight to home. So, and then on the Toonami side, we show a lot of acquired anime, and a lot of it is dubs coming in. You know, we're premiering the dubs, and a lot of those had to halt because actors couldn't get together. I think you have seen the business get back on its feet a little bit and be able to work more remotely. And so I think going forward, it's going to be a lot smoother. But, you know, it's been a rough year for both the productions we've been working on and for the acquired anime that we're trying to premiere. We've had to halt premieres. We've had to change schedules. It's been quite a tough year for us and fans who watch anime on television.
Yeah, it's definitely been a tough year, and the other category, if you will, of anime and Japanese pop culture entertainment, of course, is live events. And here in Japan, those have been a very profitable outlet for studios and producers because people will go to a big anime song concert, or go to a 2.5D event and buy merchandise, which they don't ordinarily look for, buy T-shirts, buy DVDs, even actually DVDs, and that has all been shut down. So yeah, it's certainly been a tough year all around in those respects. But again, there have been surprises, rather positive surprises, and clearly one of them is the runaway success of Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba, which I'm told will be now it's out in Taiwan, also breaking records in Taiwan, and I'm told it will be out in North America early 2021, early next year. So now I'm going to ask you very quickly to shift ahead from 2020, looking into your anime crystal balls. Let's say 5 years down the line, what are the one or two most significant developments you see coming? And you know, you're in the business, so you're getting paid to see these things coming. uh, Help us out. What do you see in your crystal ball for, let's say, 5 years from now, 2025? What's happening in the business?
I think we're going to see a lot more TV series. I think that's going to continue. I don't know if there's going to be any more further consolidation of the American streaming market. I think we're pretty much of the anime business between Sony and Crunchyroll getting together. I think there's no more movement there, but yet to be known whether that's good or bad for the industry, but we find out. I hope it's good. I think once COVID clears, or at least gets back to a level of normalcy, we're going to see a lot more TV productions because, as we've been discussing in this panel, there's a lot of money being pumped into the anime market, and new studios are being constantly coming online in Japan. Just in the last couple of months, I've been talking to studios that didn't exist 12 months ago. So because the demand is there, the supply is not. People that would normally get into the video game business in Japan or the advertising business are now moving into and starting anime studios. So I believe we're going to have a lot more production capacity, but it's going to take a few years to get there. I'll pass it over to Jason or Maki, who wants it.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah. Go ahead, Maki.
Okay, go ahead. Okay, 2025. So right now, I just said that I have like 6 or 7 shows that I'm producing right now. The last one will probably be not until 2025. But in addition to that, I have this, like, I'm developing this one show that I can't talk about because I signed the NDA. But this one is like pretty impressive. I mean, like, it's really gonna blow everybody's mind away. And yeah, so I'm hoping that's gonna happen, like, hopefully before 2025. And then also, I really want to, I know Jason already knows my plan, but there's something that I'm really exciting, that's exciting that I'm scheming. So, but again, like, I can't talk about it. I wish I could, but yeah. So it's gonna be a great, exciting 5 years from now on, and I see a very bright future ahead of me.
I think that, like John said, there's not a lot more consolidation that can happen, but I do think Netflix pumping so much money into the industry is making other streaming services more aware that they should maybe be getting into that business, like my company, HBO Max, but also Hulu, also Amazon, who heavily invest in licensing. If Sony decides to pull a lot of the titles that they currently license to Hulu and make them exclusive to them, Hulu will have to make a decision on how much they want to be in the anime business. So I do think you're going to see the arms race of anime continue to heat up with the two dominant forces in terms of just volume being Netflix and Sony. I don't know if that'll be good or bad, but usually competition is good for the marketplace and for fans. And then personally, I have 10 shows in production, the last of which is 2025. So a lot's going to depend on next year and the ensuing years. How those shows do will tell a lot about my personal future, but I am very excited about what's to come.
So 2025 is a big year for you, Jason.
Yeah.
Already.
We're rooting for you, Jason. We're rooting for you.
I'll either be retiring in 2025 or doing more than ever.
We'll all have vaccines by then. So
hopefully.
That's the good news. I'm going to switch over. We have a little bit of time left and try to convey a few questions from the audience, people watching us. One of the questions that came in earlier is, do you believe anime creators, writers, and animators get enough acknowledgement for their work like Hollywood actors and actresses? Do the artists behind anime get enough acknowledgement for their work? And I'll put it to the panel. What do you say?
I think they don't. I think they are kind of hiding in the background. I think there should be more spotlight on these creators. You get, other than Miyazaki and Makoto Shinkai, a lot of people are unknown, and there's not enough marketing or acknowledgement about these great creators' works. And I think more should be done about it in the industry, frankly.
Yeah, I think industry-wide, that goes for in Japan as well. As Maki said, anime creators are underpaid, like across the board, from the highest level directors to the lowest level animators and designers. And really, the only people I see consistently getting money and credit that they deserve are manga creators. That model is a little bit more sturdy. I would love to see more of that being brought to the creators of anime.
Yeah, just like John. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, just like John and Jason just said, there's not enough recognitions to any of the lower, well, the animators in general. I mean, directors usually get recognitions and credits and all that, and then they get invited to panels and conventions and festivals and stuff like that. But there's so many other animators that are geniuses. They're just great creators, and then they're not getting any attention whatsoever. So like one thing that I really want the anime conventions to start doing is like invite all these animators who's never been to the States. And then like, I go to panels all the time, and then I go to conventions all the time. I do a lot of panels, and then like once you're up on stage, people treat you like a rock star. And then like, some people don't like it. And I didn't really get used to it until like, recently, but like they really cheer you, and then like they give you like such motivation, because like you don't even know when you're stuck in the studio in Japan that there's so many people outside of Japan and outside the studios that are like a fan of your work, and then like once you're out there, and then people are like asking to take photos with you, like you get asking for your autographs and all that. I think that's such a good, like a motivation booster, so I want every one of the animators to experience that. It's impossible, but like at least like a few, so to answer your questions, I don't think they're getting any recognitions.
Next time I go to a con, I'm going to go with Maki, because she gets the rock star treatment.
VIP.
I've been searching for.
She has backstage passes, Roland.
Yeah, the backstage pass. I got to get one of those. Terrific answers. And yeah, I just want to add myself that the low wages paid in the anime industry have been a problem for many, many years. Some people blame the god of manga and anime, Osamu Tezuka. Some people for setting a very, very low price way back in the 60s. But it's been a problem. I can say in the past year and a half or so, really the past year and a half, because the labor ministry has cracked down on some studios here in Tokyo, and forced them to pay overtime or to not have people overstay their hours. And because there's awareness online of artists in the anime industry getting such low pay, the situation is gradually improving. Gradually there, and the awareness is certainly far greater now than it was even 3 years ago. People are aware that these people are getting, sweatshop wages and are living poorly, which is not a good thing for a creative industry if your artists are being poorly treated and can't pay rent and have to live with their parents into their 30s and can't have a family. So there is a much greater awareness today than there used to be. Very, very quickly, I'm going to combine a couple of questions that came in earlier about the US funding so much male teen focused anime, shonen, mainly seinen anime. And is there going to be a broader approach going forward? More slice of life stories, more shoujo stories. This is obviously partly a complaint by someone that there's so much male teen focused anime. Is that going to become more diverse in the future?
Well, typically shonen is what sells. But just the bottom line, and what motivates productions is, to some degree, money. U.S. companies want to see a good return on their investment. Slice of life and some other types of anime sometimes just don't resonate. Sentai has been known for trying all kinds of films, from like art house, experimental, all the way to mainstream titles. So we dabble in different things, but when it comes to the thought of American companies putting money into something like a slice of life, that would be very unusual, I think, at this stage. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think look at Marvel and comic book movies. Right now there are so many more stories that are told in comics beyond superheroes, but clearly the dominant form and the form audiences have resoundingly announced globally that they want to see more of are the superhero stories. So I think shonen and shoujo are just the anime version of that. It's the gateway that gets people into the more niche storytelling. And maybe as anime continues to boom, we will see one or two of those, slice of life titles or horror or whatever, pop up and maybe sort of show a different way. But for now, people are going to be risk averse in American business, especially. And they're going to look at what works, like Demon Slayer being the #1 movie. And they're going to go, that donut sold really well. I want 11 more of those donuts, and so it's, to some degree, it's also audiences and what they want,
Maki?
Yeah, I totally agree with John and Jason. But in addition to that, I think it's not just about shonen or shoujo. I think that we should start putting more focus on LGBTQ as well, I mean, like, if there's a way that I can throw in some of those elements or some of those topics in there, I think it's a great idea, People need to start being more aware of that. So, and I am sort of scheming something like that right now.
As many of you know, the diversity of anime stories, characters, situations in Japan is just astonishing. It's such a wide range of subject matter, and it's really quite thrilling to just go to Akihabara and see all the different kinds of titles and situations, let alone the fan art or doujin art that's created by fan artists at Comiket twice a year, where 500,000 people show up. So the enthusiasm, the passion, and the diversity is really already built into the industry in Japan. It's a matter of sort of spreading that around the world. Well, Maki, Jason, John, thank you so very, very much for joining me on this panel. I've learned a lot in just an hour here, and hope to see all you guys soon, somewhere in the world, soon and safe, somewhere in the world. And if I don't talk to you again, I wish you very happy holidays here at the end of the year.
Thank you. You too, Roland.
I'm Roland Kelts. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. I also want to thank our hosts, specifically Yuki, Charlie, and Yuko, for having us here today. It's been a real honor, a pleasure too. Thank you. Thank you very much. Arigatou gozaimasu.
Thank you very much.
Well, Roland and Maki and Jason and John, thank you so much for an insightful discussion about the world of anime and introducing our audience to that world. We hope that you guys will all come back and do another program, because I know there's a lot more that Hollywood and we can all learn from. I'd also like to thank again our partners at Japan House Los Angeles, and especially Yuko Kaifu, the president of Japan House Los Angeles, and as well as JETRO and Cool Japan Fund for helping put this program together and really launching us into the world of Japanese anime. I also like to thank our sponsors for this evening and for the entire Entertainment Summit, Paul Hastings, Manat, Walt Disney Imagineering, and O'Melveny for supporting us in these challenging times and helping us to continue the tradition of putting on US-Asia Entertainment Summit and really working to build bridges between the United States and the different countries and cultures of Asia. I'd also like to support I'd like to thank our promotional partners, American Chamber of Commerce Shanghai, the Asian Business League of Southern California, Chinese and Entertainment, the Los Angeles Chinese Film Festival, New Filmmakers Los Angeles, and the USC Marshall School of Business IBER MBA program. Again, just wanted to thank everybody for joining us. This has been an incredible week for us and an experience. We'd like to also invite you to join us for our next program, which will be basically on our China Insight series. Will be a sit-down fireside chat with Wang Shi, the founder of Vanke, the largest Chinese real estate company, one of the largest real estate companies in the world. That will be happening on Monday, the 23rd. And then also, again, encourage people to join as members for Asia Society and donate. If you'd like to support, we make our programs free online for everyone. So if you'd like to support the programming that we're doing and to encourage us to make more, please consider becoming a member or donating. So again, thank you to everybody and for an amazing program, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you and good night.